We know this was the situation 200 years, 300 years back, when people were enslaved, when their land were auctioned, and this is today. There's no big difference. There are change in the political format of making people slave, taking their land for the colonial purpose. So we can simply compare the situation of 200 years or 300 years back vis-a-vis today. The players are changed. Now the corporates are the big players. Nearly 70% population in the developing countries are out of formal registered tenure. That means their land rights, it's not secured. And the country like India, various countries in Africa, various countries in Latin America, we are the worst witness out of this kind of situation. And while land rights it's extremely important, we understand the land rights as a human right also. But it also gives us a dignity and identity, especially in the country like India or in the neighboring countries like Asian situation. If I don't have land, I don't have identity, I don't have dignity. We know this fact that between 1770 and 1830, more than 3,000 legislations that were passed. And most of these legislations were actually dealt for the enclosures, for taking the common property land and taking this common property land and using this land for the revenue purpose, for the big sugarcane plantation, maybe for a big cotton industry, and making a lot of people slaves and dependent on the big corporates. And this is the situation of today. There's no big difference. As I said, the whole dramatic changes which was happened because of industrial agriculture, because of industrial forestry, and because of complete misuse of land. A book called Terra River, which says that we have already lost more than 70% of the grassland, 50% of the savanna land, 45% of the tropical forest, and 27% of the tropical forest. And this is constantly increasing. So we are actually crossing the planetary peripheries, the boundaries of ecological footprint. We are losing the ground. This is the one thing which definitely we have to understand. The global increase in the land value, because the most of the big corporations, the big corporates, they go to the countries who are the poor, they are taking a huge amount of land and they are paying almost nothing. And if you see the price of increase in the land value, I mean, you can simply say the comparison, the land price in Europe, it's close to, the Eastern Europe is close to 1,800%. In India, it's close to 500%, and in Ethiopia, it's less than 50%. So, a more poor country, we are paying less, and comparatively rich country, we are paying more. And it's completely mismatched. The backyard of planet, the big phenomena of urbanization. And we can see with our own experiences that the growing urbanization is one of the biggest threat for the land issue, because millions and millions of farmers in the global south are losing their land because of massive urbanization. Cities are growing and poor people don't have any place to live. And this is every day we are facing a huge amount of challenge, because I mean, take an example of India, where in the last 40 years we have lost 92,000 villages. So 92,000 villages are wiped out from the map of India only because of urbanization. Nowhere to go. The people, once they lost the land, they have absolutely no place to go and to stay. So that's how they become a cheap labor in the cities. The labor without any job, the labor without any identity, like unauthorized citizen of the big cities. So these were the people who had a good amount of land like 10 years back or 20 years back, but now they are the beggars. And it's increasing in numbers everywhere. This is also create, as I said, it's not just an economic problem, it's a problem of rootlessness. Because once we lost the land, that means we are without roots. And we have to understand this whole psychological dimension of the landlessness also. And it's also responsible for creating a huge amount of violence, which we can see across the world. How we analyze the whole landscape of violence. The first and foremost important, in the beginning of the 20th century, there was some process for land distribution in different countries. Take the example of Global South. There was not properly land reforms has been done, and now the second generation is waiting for their land. So the first generation were completely landless, and now we are creating more and more people landless. We are also seeing the chronic inequalities, which is also responsible for a huge amount of violence. Example of Nepal, example of Thailand, example of India. We can take example of African countries. The chronic inequality, it's actually creating a lot of violence. A lot of people deprived, and that's how they are fighting. They are fighting with the state, they are fighting with each other. So all resource-rich area, we are converting into the violence, and which is a big problem, and it's an ecological danger also. We have a lot of very interesting example. Why and how after getting land, the people's life, it's completely changed. The all successful examples, the all examples which is in the middle category, and there are some interesting new cases where after getting the land, the people's life have been a little bit changed. And it's part of a global study. I have taken this note from Soil Atlas. Now coming back to India, a specific case. One of the biggest danger is a mining. India is a rich country in terms of mineral resources. We are taking the mineral resources without realizing anything. We are creating a huge amount of ecological problem. We are creating a huge amount of problem for the human beings. And we are not giving anything to those people who lost their land because of the mining operation. And you can see there are various hotspots of mining in India. More than 10,000 mining operations are carrying throughout the India. And the government of India report itself says that more than 70% of the mining operation in India are illegal. That means they are not properly understand or follow the norms of the mining. Econometrics of mining. The government is allowing the big companies like Rio Tinto or De Beers for taking the mineral resources, and the amount of revenue they are paying to the state, it's negligible. Half of €1 for 1 ton of bauxite mineral. Can you imagine? This is an amount of crisis and the burden they are actually giving it to the people. We are denying the environmental norms. It's a corrupt country, so there is no surveillance, no supervision on whether the mining companies are really following the economic environmental norms or not. And it's a complete, total bypass of intergenerational equity, which is a country like India, a poor country like India is extremely important. Whether we are really want to secure something for the next generations or you want to exploit everything for this generation. So these are some larger issues around the mining. Let me take you to some larger issues around the forestry, which is a second block of the whole land grabbing and land questions in India. The forest legislation, which was made by Britishers, it's actually differentiate, it's actually disallow the indigenous people to stay inside the forest. Because this legislation used a very, very bad terminology called encroachers. So the all indigenous people who lived inside the forest without entitlement are encroachers. How to say encroachers in French?
C'est des envahisseurs.
And 8 million people, they were thrown out of forest simply because forest department thought they are the encroachers. So there is a big fight between the indigenous people and the forest bureaucracy. India is also known for national park and wildlife sanctuaries. We have more than 550 national park and wildlife sanctuaries. So there is a very clear focus for protecting the wildlife. But what about the people who live in those areas? Many people, they lost their land. We have a conditionalities of World Bank. World Bank is giving a huge amount of loan for the forestry sector in India. So they say it's a soft loan. And we know that what is the meaning of soft loan is. The soft loan has always coming with a hard condition. And the hard condition is don't allow the people to live inside the national park and wildlife sanctuary. So it also creates a huge amount of problem. And the politics of green greed, the carbon trading. Now the whole carbon trading is started, and India is one of the hotspots of the carbon trading. So we are bargaining for our forest, and we are actually displacing and evicting our own people. The third is water, river, the water bodies. India is one of those countries where privatization has been done with some legal routes. India is a one country where more than 4 or 5 rivers has been partially or indirectly privatized for the industrial purpose. So the whole river is for the one corporate house. And we have a lot of such examples. We are doing a huge amount of industrialization in the river basins without any realization, so that the whole river valley is completely destroyed. We can take the example of Northeast, we can take the example of Himalayan rivers, we can take the example of even the central part of India. The heavy amount of industrialization, especially the cement industry, a coal industry, power industries, they need a huge amount of water. And most of these industries are located in the river basins. And that's how they are not over exploiting the waters, but they are polluting the waters also. So we are actually privatizing the whole coastline, which is creating a huge problem. And building water bomb means dam. We call dam as a water bomb. Still, without any realization, India is investing a huge amount of money for creating more and more dams. And all these dams are creating a huge amount of problem for displacing millions of people. As I said, the infrastructural project, the urbanization is become one of the biggest challenge for all of us. We are creating more and more people homeless. We are forcefully occupy the land of the villages in the peripheries and making the people cheap laborers in the cities. Delhi is example, Mumbai is example, even the smaller cities are example for this. We are building more and more slums where there is no dignified life for the ordinary people. And a huge amount of freedom for the real estate, and how they are creating a huge amount of conflicting situation on the ground. Completely no regulation on the real estate sector. So the whole infrastructural project and the urbanization project is actually responsible for creating a huge amount of conflict for the people on the ground. Now what we are doing, what Ekta Parishad is doing in this situation, we are fighting against the land acquisition, we are fighting against the land grabbing, we are fighting against the land pooling and the virtual trade of land. See, in India, there is a process, there is a law for land acquisition, which was made by Britishers, which is recently changed in 2013. But if government follow the land acquisition, they have to compensate the people who are actually losing the land. So now government has decided not to go through legal way, but to start a new way which is called land pooling. That means putting a lot of goons on the ground, the middlemen, beat the people, put them in jail, and somehow snatch their land rights and give it to the corporates. So the land pooling is not illegal, but if you go through with different websites of the government, different state government's website, you can find that state government have this much of land through land pooling. And land grabbing is a constant phenomenon still. We are struggling for the survival. See, the most of legislation which came in the last 10 years in India the Forest Rights Act, the Land Acquisition Act. It's all act. All these legislation based on benefit sharing. That means we want to take your land and we'll give you some monetary compensation. We want to take the land from you, we'll give you a small piece of land for building your house. So this benefit sharing model, it's actually creating a huge amount of problem for the movements. So we lost our fundamental space, democratic space, to go against the acquisition. But we have to accept something. So the whole benefit sharing model, it's actually creating a problem for the people on the ground. We are decentralizing the land governance. Government of India received millions and millions of rupees for modernization of land records. And that's called land reforms in India nowadays. So if you talk any government official, are you doing land reforms? They said yes, we are doing land reforms. We received money from the World Bank and ADB, and we are modernizing the land records. And what is the modernization? It's putting all the garbage, because the land records, in reality, it's completely mismatched. So they are putting the garbage in the computer and they are taking from the other side as a garbage. So it's a garbage in, garbage out process. So the computerization or digitalization, it's extremely dangerous for us. And we have a lot of cases how the people lost their land because of this digitalization and computerization process, which was completely guided by World Bank. Land occupancy, the one action which is a strength of Ekta Parishad. If the government is not giving you a land, go and occupy the land. So it's a land occupation movement, like MST, like a lot of other movements. And we do this land occupation movement until now. And Ekta Parishad is badly known for that. And sometimes we were beaten also for that. We do satyagraha. That means fight for truth. And what is the fight for truth? What we are asking. In every 10th year, we have a census, the process of counting each and every household in the country. So the recent census was 2011. And the first time, Government of India did a socio-economic caste census. That means census on the basis of caste and class. And the result, especially on the land-related figures, are shocking, even shocking for us. This report says, officially, Government of India report says, that more than 56% of the rural population are landless. So, if more than 50% rural population are landless, that means they don't have any legal deeds, legal papers in their hand, then what government is actually doing? So, what we are asking to the Government of India is a land guarantee legislation. If we don't give right over the land resources, how people can become a part of this developmental process? We are also talking about the land reforms policy. In India, we don't have policy on the land reforms. We don't have land use policy in India either. So we don't know that how much land has best use for what purpose. So the one of the most fertile land is actually given for the industrial purpose. The one of the wasteland is actually given for the cultivation purpose. The all rich forest is actually goes for the mining. And all good river valleys is actually goes for some other industrial purpose. So we don't have any understanding on land use. We don't have land use policy in India, neither at the national level nor at the state level. And that's creating a huge amount of conflicting situation. The government doesn't know what to do, but they are very clever. They don't want to even to bring the land reforms policy, because if they bring the land reforms policy, then it's problem for them. And we are fighting. The third is also we are fighting for the strong legislation on farmers' rights, because India is one of those few countries where more than 300 farmers were committed suicide. The huge amount of propaganda against agriculture sector is happening throughout India, and which is a huge challenge for all of us. But in spite of that, we are asking for strong protective legislation for the farmers, especially the small and marginal farmers, which are close to 70% of the total farming community in India. and it's a human right. That's why we think it's important for us to take all these factors as a truth for our fight. We did a lot of foot marches, and started from 99 till today. We had several foot marches across the country, and every foot marches has actually created some amount of success on the ground. People get some land, and sometimes they lost also. So it's constant process of getting something and losing something. So it's not on always win-win situation. Most of the time we were defeated also. So it's a success and defeat, both. This was a one action which we did this year in the month of October, when 25,000 people we were walked, and there was a negotiation with the government of India. There was a negotiation with the opposition party. They did their promises that they are ready to accept this land guarantee legislation in the next session of parliament, which could be winter session or after. And they are also ready to understand and consider the land reforms policy, which are two of our key focus. We hope that with this action, maybe some achievement we'll get in the future. For the next, we are planning to do a march, which is one of our ambitious plan, which is not the subject of today. But anyway, I'll just give you a very brief, that with the issue of peace and justice, for us, the land is a strong symbolized with justice and peace. So we are taking these issues along with all other farmers organization, landless organization in different parts of the world. And we are planning to do a march, a foot march from New Delhi to Geneva in 2020.